Australasian countries have marked the 10th anniversary of the Bali Bombings with a commemorative service for the victims of the attack. Foreign Affairs Minister Murray McCully joined the Australian Prime Minister Julia Gillard and other Kiwis and Australians affected by the 2002 disaster. 8 Kiwi survivors of the Bali Bombings have returned to the beach where the blast took place. 3 New Zealanders died in the terrorist attack, which killed 202 people altogether. Associate Immigration Minister Kate Wilkinson has turned down Mike Tyson's second visa application. Ms Wilkinson says while he's been granted entry into Australia, the Manukau Urban Authority's endorsement isn't enough to get him here. There's been mounting opposition here against the applications, with opposition politicians also weighing in on the act, saying the former boxer is not an appropriate role model. Greens co-leader Maturia Ture welcomed the government's decision.
No justification for giving Mike Tyson a special dispensation. Being famous is not good enough.
Mike Tyson's tour promoters won't be applying for another visa. Max Markson says those who bought tickets for the New Zealand leg will get a full refund. New measures from the White Paper on vulnerable children are to be piloted in Rotorua. A children's team and child wellbeing experts will aim to prevent abuse escalating. Minister Paula Bennett believes Rotorua is ready to spearhead this project.
Even though the numbers of substantiated abuse have gone down, that's not because you don't know about them or people are not reporting. People are reporting more.
3 opposition parties have banded together to announce they are forming a parliamentary inquiry into what they call the country's manufacturing crisis. Labour, the Greens and New Zealand First plan to release a report next year after hearing public submissions on how to save our manufacturing industry. Winston Peters says the need for solutions is urgent.
This issue is of such a crisis that every political party would put apart their differences to try and come up with a solution, and that's why we want to be a part of this.
A political stunt is how the government's labelling the inquiry. Economic Development Minister Stephen Joyce says opposition parties remain determined to keep the New Zealand economy down. He says the figures claiming 40,000 manufacturing job losses in the last 4 years and 2 years are 2 years out of date, and jobs are actually growing. In overseas news, claims that factions in Russia are actively supporting al-Assad's government. Turkey's Prime Minister says a Syrian plane on its way from Moscow to Damascus was carrying military equipment and ammunition for the Syrian Defence Ministry from a Russian military supplier. Rekindled union unrest in South Africa has seen striking miners set a man on fire, while another man was fatally shot, apparently by police. The violence near an Anglo-American platinum mine has escalated since the company dismissed 12,000 striking miners last Friday. The dispute between Japan and China over a chain of islands in the East China Sea continues to escalate. China has boycotted the International Monetary Fund meeting in Tokyo, and protests have erupted across China targeting Japanese businesses and property. Counter-protests have been organised in Tokyo. To the US, Joe Biden and Paul Ryan have squared off in a nationwide televised vice presidential debate. Current VP Biden blamed the opposition for the country's economic recession, while Republican contender Paul Ryan pointed out the government's stimulus package has failed to deliver the promised 4% growth. They've also clashed on foreign policy. Ryan criticised the Obama administration for failing to respond decisively in Libya and Syria. Finally, today is the 95th anniversary of the Battle of Passchendaele, which was fought during World War I near Flanders and Belgium. It was marked by a solemn ceremony at the Auckland War Memorial Museum, attended by politicians, members of the public and the military personnel past and present. Guest speaker and war historian Glyn Harper explained why the battle was so contentious and remains historically significant.
It's one of the battles where it gets as bad as it possibly can on the Western Front. The mud, the terrible climate, the terrain, the massive loss of life, the setting of deep objectives of courageous men trying to do what is almost impossible, attacking barbed wire, attacking pillboxes, and it's and it's a significant battle on the Western Front. It's also very significant to New Zealand in terms of the number of people who died. We're talking about 846 in a day, another 138 dying within the next week, and about 2,700 wounded. It deeply affected New Zealand. Every family in New Zealand would have known somebody that had been involved in this battle.
He emphasised the need for current and future generations to remember New Zealand's sacrifices of the past. And that's been reflected in a Battle of Passchendaele multimedia competition. This year's winner is 17-year-old high school student Nathan Gary, who was presented with his prize by Veterans Affairs Minister Nathan Guy. Ka nuina karere matua mai te whare kōrero o rima, mauri ora.